Well, Wyoming is the least populated state in the nation, which most people don't realize.
Yes.
So we have only 550,000 people in the whole state.
Well, you hear Wyoming and you think Grand Tetons.
Right.
That's a very, very small percentage of the state.
That's exactly right.
There's not a lot going on in Wyoming.
That's exactly right. Yeah. And we live in the southeast corner, which is the most populated part of the whole state.
Yeah.
Because we have Cheyenne
Yeah.
and Laramie. There's only one 4-year university in the whole state, only one private accredited school. That's us, WyoTech. So
yeah,
Wyoming is very unique.
It's a crazy place. It's funny too. Have you seen Yellowstone, the TV
I've
show?
seen several of those shows. Yes. Yep.
And how
I love how they fix fence.
yeah.
Or not.
That's the funny I was just talking to somebody about that. They're like, it's just them roping and riding around.
Yeah.
He's like, what about the fences? Like that's cowboying, fixing fences.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah. And
it's not very realistic, but it's entertaining.
No, because I remember growing up, like the biggest problem was the damn cows would get out.
Yes.
And then you're having to go find them. You're having to get them back in there. Now you have to find out where they got out. Now you have to fix the fence.
Well, it's elk going through the fences. They're terrible, around our place and even up there, Yellowstone stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. Elk.
The elk will mess it up, huh?
Elk mess them up. Terrible.
I got you.
Because they aren't as graceful as deer. Antelope as a whole go under the fence.
Yep.
And deer jump and they're graceful. And elk, they try. So,
sure.
But they don't make it all the time. So they tear those fences up terrible.
Wow.
So
elk, huh?
Yep.
Do you hunt?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I haven't for a couple of years, but I still enjoy the wildlife and go help people that are son or granddaughters or whatever.
Yeah.
If they get an elk, I'll go help them pack it out or whatever. So,
sure.
Yep.
Yeah. No, I'm sure that's as good as it gets, having them come right to your doorstep.
Oh, yes. I tell people we don't hunt on our ranch, we get. I took my granddaughter, one of my granddaughters, elk hunting this year, just 2 weeks ago. And there's 16 bull elk, all 5 and 6 points. The third one back was a huge 6 point. Oh. And I said, Elena, they're 100 yards away. They don't know we're there. Oh. They just are meandering up the hill back to the day where they're going to spend the day.
Yeah.
And I said, Elena, shoot that third one. No, I think I'll just wait. I'm saying people would kill for this, So she passed on all 16 or 17 bulls that day.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. So,
unbelievable.
Yeah.
Wow.
But that's a typical, we have elk. I shouldn't say that. Hopefully that doesn't go online. So.
Yeah.
I'll have a lot of friends.
Yeah.
So.
No. People don't know where you're at. I've eaten more elk this year than most, and it is just so delicious.
Yeah. Normally elk is the best wild game there is.
Oh, it's
better than moose, definitely better than deer, better than antelope.
I want to try bear. I've heard it's pretty interesting. I've
never had bear. I've had mountain lion.
Wow.
And that was okay.
Yeah.
That's kind of a chicken or lighter meat. Fine, very fine textured.
Uh-huh.
I had alligator.
I've had alligator.
Yeah.
Alligator's good.
Yeah. Ours was a little chewy. My hired hand got it.
I got you.
In Florida and brought it out.
Yeah.
But yeah. So.
Yeah, but elk is just so hard to beat.
It is, yeah. Unless you get an old bull or whatever. But most elk is really good.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I've this year too. I've eaten a lot more bison than.
And what do you think of it?
I think it's better than beef a lot of times.
I'll be.
Yeah, because they can't feed it. They can't use hormones.
Yeah.
And there's all these rules around bison that they don't have for cattle.
Huh.
So you can give cattle a lot more garbage than you can bison for some reason. I need to look into it, but it's a lot better of a meat.
I'll be.
If you just look at just some beef or some bison, bison's the better choice.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Because most people out in Wyoming, we don't, but our neighbors raise some buffalo.
Sure.
Bison and most of our people say we can't stand that.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. Yeah.
And I've had buffalo or bison steak or hamburgers before and couldn't tell the difference really. But
it's so hard.
Yeah.
If someone had never had it before and you told them it was a hamburger,
you'd never guess it.
Nah, they'd have no idea.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. There's a lot. Where did you grow up? Did you grow up in Wyoming?
Since I was 12.
Since you were 12.
Yep.
So that's really all you've ever known.
Pretty much, yep. First 12 years was in Michigan.
A
And
lot
then,
different.
yeah. And then my dad was a preacher, and he moved us to LaGrange, Wyoming. And then as soon as I hit the state, I said, I'm giving up my baseball bat and baseball, and I'm going to become a cowboy.
Really?
So I started hanging around cowboys and ranchers and breaking horses, and left home when I was 14 to move on a farm and ranch.
No kidding.
And that got me into the equipment side of things, farm equipment and some heavy equipment. And that took me into custom combining. And so I ended up in Texas harvesting wheat and then heading north. And that winter, that got me into semis. I was driving semis when I was 17 and just fell in love with them. And that took me, I thought I was going to own a fleet of semis. So then I decided to go to WyoTech to learn diesel mechanics, more of diesel mechanics. So we've been working on them ever since I was 14, but learn more. And thinking I was going to own a fleet of semis when I graduated or soon thereafter, and then I quit.
So you went to WyoTech?
Yes, as a 18, 19-year-old kid. Yep.
That's crazy.
Yes.
I did not know that.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
So it's been around for a while.
Oh, yes, since 66. And I went there in 76. So I missed the first 10 years, but I had a connection ever since pretty much.
Holy smokes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so halfway through school, I had an amazing teacher, and I hated high school. I'm actually a high school dropout. I quit high school because they promised me I could graduate at the end of my junior year, and I jumped through all their hoops, and then they changed their mind. And well, in the meantime, I had already committed to going to Texas and combining wheat and driving trucks and working on them.
Yeah.
And so, but anyway, halfway through school, I had an amazing teacher that I didn't feel like I had in high school. And so then I changed my mind. I thought, I want to come back and teach. And I was the shyest kid you've ever met in your life. But I graduated in June of 1976. And that fall, October of 76, I heard that there was an opening. So I begged my way into teaching at 19.
Really?
Yeah. So, which is a whole crazy story, but yep.
What did you teach?
Diesel, powertrains. I loved gears at that time, you know?
Yeah.
So, but after a year and a half of teaching gears, I got tired of differentials and transmissions and clutches and brakes and air systems. So I begged my way into teaching diesel fuel injection, and I had to study up big time on that, but ended up falling in love with that.
Wow.
And so I taught a lot of fuel injection and engines rebuild. And plus I had a side business. As I was teaching, I had a side business to repair diesel.
You know, it's funny because at 19, you know, what do you know about diesel engines? But if you started when you were 14, a lot of people just view 1 year of experience as 1 year of experience, but it doesn't work that way.
That's exactly right.
And if you're just this hungry, stupid kid starting at 14, you know, from then to 19, you can learn so much.
Absolutely right.
So much. So yeah, you're this 19-year-old kid, but you probably knew your way around.
I knew a lot, you know, but also when you teach something, you don't know a lot.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Because you get, instead of thinking of an operation one way, you get questions that you never thought of before. And so being a teacher, the students make you a lot smarter.
Yeah.
And just by their questioning and stuff you hadn't thought about or how to answer. And so I ended up loving, the first 6 months was rough. As a 19-year-old, I thought I knew a lot more than I did, and I didn't, but I studied every night in order to make it through one more day. And after 6 months, it's like, okay, I got it. Not that I wasn't still learning, but I could control the classroom. I knew what questions they're going to ask, and I learned a lot more. And so.
And how old were the kids you were teaching?
18 and 19 or 60. Yeah, some of them were 60-year-old men, you know. But after 6 months, I could win them over.
Really?
Yep, I won them over.
How would you win them over?
By that time, I knew my subject, and I asked them a lot of questions. And I love teaching. I love people. I love to see the lights come on when they started asking questions and their aha moment. Oh, I understand how, you know, the 13-speed transmission works and the reverse and, you know, and the different ratios. I used to teach gear ratios and gear splits and all those. And to make sure you match the transmission with the engine and the differential ratio and the tire size and all that type of stuff, you know. And when the lights came on, there's no better feeling as a teacher. And to this day, it's fun to see people whether you're teaching business or leadership or whatever, is having those aha moments in your students. So
yeah. Well, and I asked that because I talked to a lot of young people that have recently, more now than ever before, they've become a shop manager, shop foreman, or a foreman on a grading crew or whatever it is. And now they're leading guys that are 30 years older than them.
Yes.
And they're trying to earn the respect and
Yes.
try to manage a crew, and they don't know what the heck's going on.
Right.
And they're always asking, what can I do? And I at least my advice is ask a lot of questions.
Absolutely right.
That's so,
Yes.
that's so
Ask
fast.
questions, yes.
Yeah. If you ask them questions.
And if you think you know more than your students, you'll probably fail as a leader.
Sure.
Or even a shop foreman or whatever. But, ask questions. Just don't have all the answers.
Yeah.
Play dumb sometimes. Just so, all the questioning, you can understand what they're trying to ask, because sometimes what they ask isn't really what they need to know or want to know.
Yeah.
And so just be a little patient. And I don't get it right all the time, but I figured out how to win people over, especially in a classroom or leadership role. So
yeah, the one thing I've noticed about really successful people, especially in this world, is they all play dumb a little bit.
yes,
They all undersell themselves. They're unassuming. Yeah, but then you look at what they've done, you're like, you're not an idiot. Like,
Right.
you're not fooling me based on your track record. You just sold your business for I don't know how many hundreds of millions of dollars.
Right.
Like, you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
But they're not out to prove how smart they are to anybody.
and they're still learning.
Yes.
And they, and again, I feel very humble and grateful. And I came from LaGrange, Wyoming. I was penniless. I was a broke kid, and to see what God has allowed me to go through and my crazy career ups and downs and everything else, it's just incredible, that my learning experience, and I still will fail. I'll still learn.
Yeah.
But it's just looking back, it's like, this is amazing. In good old USA, we have some amazing experiences and opportunities like no place else,
Hmm.
And so many times our education system puts people in boxes, and you have to do this. You have to go to 4 years. You got to go, and that's not necessarily true for all people. In fact, I think, some education systems, whether it's high school or some colleges, they actually restrict you on where you can actually potentially go.
Yeah. Well, and oftentimes that's how they're funded.
Yes.
Is how many kids they're feeding into college.
Absolutely right.
And so they're financially incentivized,
Absolutely
most
right.
school systems,
Yes.
to feed as many people into college as possible.
Absolutely right.
That's all it is.
And again, I own a school and I'm on the trustees of the University of Wyoming. So but I still, I'm a big trainer versus education. Like I said, we train people, not, again, you have to have both, but it's not for all people, and there are other ways to success other than just going through school. So,
but what I struggle with is the higher education system has done a really good job at crushing any other opportunity and any other option. And so people say, and it's a really fun talking point, kids need to go to trade schools. And everybody's like, yeah, you're right. And then I ask, so where are the trade schools? And you look around and they've mostly been wiped off the map by the higher education system.
yes. So the higher education system flat out does not like private schools.
Yes.
And most technical schools are private.
Correct.
And so the rules and compliance issues that we face are unlike any public institution.
Mm-hmm.
And so fortunately with WyoTech, our model, we can get by with all the regulations very easily. Again, we still have to watch our P's and Q's and do things right and everything else. But some of these schools are going to be shut down because of the new regulations. And the Department of Ed flat out says we do not like private for-profit schools at all. Private, not for profit, and private for-profit schools.
Mm-hmm.
And so they continually try to add additional restrictions in order to weed out what they consider the bad schools. My whole thing is after I left WyoTech in 2002, bought a ranch, was going to go broke ranch. And so then I got back into the school business doing turnaround companies in the school business. And it's a completely different curriculum. I came from WyoTech, all trades, automotive, diesel, collision refinishing, welding, fabrication as it relates to trucks and cars. And then I got into, my first turnaround was running a bunch of schools, inner city schools in California. We had 9 campuses in California, 2 in Atlanta and 1 in Florida.
Wow.
But they were medical assisting and allied health schools as a whole. Inner city schools, mostly welfare moms. Nothing against welfare moms, just the facts. And I had to say, can I ethically represent these schools? Because they were getting a bad rap from the U.S. Department of Education because of higher default rates. They weren't paying back their loans. Once I met our welfare moms that they wanted to get off welfare, the reason they were at school is they wanted to get their family off welfare. And so they would come to our schools and other private schools in order to develop a skill where they could get a job in medical assisting, dental assisting, and several other nursing.
Sure.
And when I started talking to our students, I'm thinking, go, you go, keep going. And again, did our students have a higher default rate? Yes. But what the U.S. Department of Education doesn't look at is how many students got off welfare.
Yeah.
I mean, hundreds of thousands throughout the years with all these private schools that were inner city. And so from a government and financial standpoint, if they would have balanced it out, they could probably understand why.
Sure.
And again, did some of the owners scam some students and systems and make billions or I don't know if billions, but millions? Yes. But as a whole, most of those schools were doing the right thing for the students of that type of clientele. So
yeah, and you hear the for-profit thing, and immediately you think, it's icky.
Yep.
Because they're trying to make profit on education, and all these universities, they're nonprofits.
yes,
But then you go one level down, and you look at the endowments these schools have,
Yes.
and all of the corporate interests that are in bed with these schools, printing them money.
absolutely,
Printing them money. The biggest shareholder in the public education system is the United States government, with their multiple trillions of dollars of student debt.
absolutely right.
It's crazy. Or when they proposed this really, really woke me up. They proposed it was free education or something like that, college education or free community college education just a few years ago. And it was lobbied heavily against and clobbered.
Yep.
And you're like, well, who's lobbying against that? The higher education, the colleges were lobbying against that because it takes their customer away.
Yes.
And you're just like, whoa. This is not about it. This is money.
It's money. It's driven by money. Absolutely right.
Yeah.
Yeah. They don't want to consider themselves as business, but just take a look at their annual, but any public school, you can Google them. I don't care if it's a junior college, 4-year public school, whatever, any university or public school, just Google their budget.
Yeah.
And it is crazy how much money they spend to train or educate a student on an annual basis.
Sure.
We charge our tuition for WyoTech is $31,750 for a 9-month program.
Mm-hmm.
And we're making money at it. It costs most public school systems, it costs to train a student twice what we receive.
Wow.
And we're making money, and they're always broke and needing more money every year.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's fascinating to start looking at their budgets.
So you, how long did you teach at WyoTech initially?
Only about 2.5 years.
Okay.
And then I got into being the assistant training director for a diesel program, and then was training director and ran our diesel program for 4 or 5 years. And then August 20th, 1990 at 4:00 in the afternoon, not that I remember times and dates real well, I got fired. Had a new boss and a new parent ownership or new company ownership, and a new president came in, a new vice president was appointed that I reported up to the vice president. He hounded me for a year, told me my first one-on-one with him, he told me I'd never be successful without a bachelor's degree. And
that's productive.
Yeah. And I said, Alan, I've made it a lot farther than I ever expected already from a kid from LaGrange, Wyoming with a GED.
Yeah.
I said, I feel like, and then he said, you'll never go beyond where you're at without your bachelor's. I suggest that you quit. And by this time I got a mortgage. I got 3 kids below the age of 6 or 7. I said, Alan, I said, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to sit in a classroom for 4 years and hope to get a job back here or anyplace else. I said, if I quit or you run me off, I'll go get a job in the industry and managing something else. And so for a year, he hounded me and I pushed back. And anyway, August 20th, 1990, he fired me. And I knew it was coming. I was miserable. He was miserable. I was making other people miserable. He was making other people miserable. It was time for a change. But the next day, I happened to talk to the president, and he was a new president. He had authorized me being fired. But when I saw him, he wouldn't look at me because he thought I was going to be mad. So I just grabbed his hand and shook it. And I says, Terry, I suppose me getting fired means I'm not going to become your next vice president. And he looks up at me, and I'm smiling. And he chuckles. He said, yeah, I suppose that's what that means, but have a chair. Mm-hmm. And so we went into his office, and we talked for 2 hours and BS'd about, I don't have any idea. Besides, he promised me a bonus, and it wasn't on my check, and he said he'd get it to me. But otherwise, I don't know what we talked about, but we spent 2 hours BSing. And the next morning, I'm literally laying on the couch, wondering what I want to be when I grow up. And this was before cell phones. And phone rings at 7 o'clock in the morning. And my wife answers the phone, and she puts her hand over the mic. She says, I think it's Terry Harrison, the president. And I says, well, bring me the phone. So she brings me the long cord across the living room, and I just laid on the couch. And I said, this is Jim. And he says, this is Terry Harrison. What are you doing? And I said, I'm just laying here wondering what I want to be when I grow up. And he said, I know what you want to be. You want to become one of my vice presidents. I said, yes, sir. He said, I need someone with your attitude to come back and be over all the training and curriculum and part store and training aids and that type of stuff.
Wow.
And I said, well, what about Alan? All that stuff reports to him now. He said, I'm going to put him over licensing and accreditation. And he says, I need someone with your attitude to run all these guys.
Wow.
And I said, okay. So I was fired for 3 days and came back with a promotion.
I'm sure Alan was real
thrilled.
Oh,
he was, yeah. I spoke yesterday in our about leadership, and I said, as leaders, we all blow it, and he could have said, hey, Jim, I was wrong for the last year, shook my hand, say, welcome aboard. But he chose, he said, if you bring Mathis back, I quit. So he quit, and I moved into his office and had all his responsibilities.
Wow.
So, yeah. So
that's crazy.
It is crazy.
Okay. So that was your first real introduction into the world of business.
Oh,
then.
my goodness. Yes. And more leadership on people versus business, because I didn't understand how revenue came in and sales and the finances and everything else. And that's another story. 4 years later, we changed ownership again. And the new president comes in, and after 8 months, I'm the only vice president. I've got over half the company reporting to me and thinking I'm doing a great job. And I probably had a pretty big ego at the time. And but he pulls me in his office on a Monday afternoon at 4 in 1994 and said, Jim, you're no longer my vice president. He said, you need to be out of your office tonight. And I says, okay. He said, your replacement's coming tomorrow morning, and he's taking your office over. And I says, okay. I says, which office do I need to move to? And he said, just take your personal stuff and take it home. He said, for what you're doing, you don't need an office. So the lights started going on. I thought, oh, he wants me to quit. Guess what? I'm stubborn and a little stupid. I'm not quitting. You can fire me. I'll leave with a smile on my face. And so I said, well, who still works for me? He said, the janitors. And I thought, oh, wow, is that a blow? And so very honestly, I walked on my bottom lip for about 2 weeks and wandered in the halls, wondering what in the world is God trying to teach me now? And then I thought, change your attitude, put your smile back on. I got less responsibilities. He didn't cut my pay, and enjoy life. Take the break, because as a leader with a lot going on, you're busy.
Correct.
And now I'm not that busy. I had to keep the buildings clean and our maintenance up. And so, and then the company started failing. And so we're owned by Bankers Trust out of New York City. Mm-hmm. And they were, at the time, were the fourth largest bank in the United States. It's now the world's largest, which is Deutsche Bank. Mm-hmm. But anyway, they flew out and they forced that president to get me involved with employees issues and admissions and marketing sales. And I did not think I would like sales. In fact, I cussed their sales team for years because they lied to our students, and I was dealing with mad students and mad moms and everything else. But it was meant to be that I got into the more people and the sales side. And something I thought I would end up hating, I ended up loving within 3 months. And this president that tried to run me off for 18 months, the next 18 months, he poured his heart and soul into me.
Wow.
And genius, absolute genius, but taught me P&Ls, balance sheets, lease negotiations, backing into numbers, projections, sales philosophy, which we didn't use, or I didn't use it after I became president, but we changed it, but just unbelievable. And that's where I got my business experience from him, really, where I understand when cash flow, we're coming in and how our expenses worked, and was exposed to so much stuff in those 18 months is unbelievable. And they still let that guy go where he quit. But then I became president a year later and changed our whole philosophy. We're a beat down company emotionally. So we changed the colors of our buildings. We remodeled, we painted interiors and set lofty goals. Because if you don't have Proverbs 29:18 says, without a vision, people perish, but he that keepeth the law, happy is he. And it's just like, wow. We need a vision. We need a big vision. We need goals to get people focusing on something other than what other people are doing wrong. We got to have a culture of growth, people getting along so we can get this thing kickstarted. And at that time, WyoTech, the biggest it had been, is about 550 students. And so we set a goal in 1998 of we're going to have 2,000 students by the year 2000. And everybody thought I was smoking dope when we came up with that, because we'd never been over 550 students. Why do you think you can do that? And I thought, that's just mathematical. It's more salespeople. It's more training facilities. It's, and so we got people working together instead of focusing on what everybody was doing wrong. We got to focusing on a team spirit, and we can do this, And so we hit that goal in 1999. We hit our 2,000 students in 99. We got Bankers Trust. They had taken us over from a bad loan. And so we sold it for them to Allied Capital in January 1st, 1999, to get them out from underneath the debt that they had been carried for quite a few years. And then sold it to Allied Capital. 3 years later, we sold it to Corinthian Colleges, and that's where I didn't like Corinthian Colleges, the attitude they had. So I quit after we sold to them in 2002 and bought a cattle ranch. So
then you bought a cattle ranch. And I have all kinds of ranching questions. I could talk about that for an hour. But when you get back involved with WyoTech, what's the catalyst to getting back involved?
Yeah, so bought a cattle ranch in 2002, and then was going to go broke ranching. So in 2006, I had an investor out of New York call me and said, we've got a company going to go bankrupt in California. They have 12 schools, 48 hours away from bankruptcy when I went out there. And so I went out there and got those turned around, consulted 2 years with another company, East Coast to West Coast, starting a high school admissions initiative. Then I spent 2 years in Connecticut doing another turnaround, Porter and Chester colleges up there in Connecticut and Massachusetts. And then another private equity group called a couple years later and said, we got a mess in Oklahoma, Texas, and Florida, headquartered in Florida. And so moved to Florida for 2 years, and we're able to get those schools all profitable. And
so these are all private?
All private schools that private equity had bought and thought they're going to make millions, and brought in wrong leadership and wrong policies and screwed them up.
Yeah.
In a nutshell. Yep. And so then back home in 2014, and then in the fall of 2017, and in the meantime, was able to buy another ranch and grow a cattle herd. My goal was to get up to 1,200 cows, mother cows, and I got a little over halfway there.
That's a handful.
It is, yeah. And got halfway there, a little over halfway there. But I love people, and I was missing my people. And so in the fall of 2017, we just weaned all our calves, and I was training my border collies. I had a couple new pups, training my border collies and just yelling and screaming at them. And then in between yelling, I was talking to God, and I said, God, I think I've got one more turnaround company in me, but I'm not looking. And I said, it's got to be of you. And next thing you know, within a couple of weeks, I hear WyoTech is closing down, teaching all their students out and just walking away. The parent company's walking away. And I thought, and my heart literally left. I thought, oh, that'd be awesome if I could get WyoTech. But then reality sets in. They're teaching out all the students. It's a for-profit business. You don't have any revenue. And so, even if you could get the company for free, you are not going to be able to change the reputation, build that up fast enough to have any investor in their right mind, invest in something like that. And so I kind of I don't get discouraged, but I thought, okay, that's not going to work. It's going to be obviously something else. So that was the fall of 2017. In January, the end of January of 2018, just a couple of months later, a bunch of business people and in the meantime, it was going to be sold to the community college system in Wyoming. But anyway, in end of January, a bunch of business people called me from Laramie and said, and we met in Laramie, and there's about 20 of us. And the whole gist of the meeting was, can everybody find money to buy WyoTech, and we'll put Mathis in charge of it.
Wow.
And so all of us were supposed to go try to find money. And I'd done some quick calculations, and I figured it was a $12 million turnaround before we were turned to profit. And so, that's a big, huge risk.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah, to put down and say, okay, Mathis, we trust you to do this, And so I went back after that, and I made one phone call, found $3.5 million, and I was too embarrassed to call anybody else. And so I thought, this is, as much as I'd love to get WyoTech back, because I bleed WyoTech. That was my baby for years. And again, I went from student to president, and I love to see students succeed. But I thought, this is not going to work. So again, that's all end of January.
Yeah.
End of February, I'm out feeding cows. And I never take my cell phone with me, but that particular day I did. And I get an email from a state representative. And the email starts off, he says, I'm Bob Nicholas. You don't know me, but you know my brother, Phil Nicholas. And Phil is the attorney and in that meeting the month before. And he says, we're in session. Can you be here in an hour to answer questions about WyoTech? And again, I'm out feeding cows, and I'm 80 miles away from Cheyenne. And so I just responded immediately back. I said, no, Bob. But I said, I can be there in an hour and a half. I'll see you then. And so I ran and quit feeding cows and ran to take a quick shower for their sake, and drove as fast as I could to Cheyenne. And I go into it wasn't in the Capitol, it was in a different building, but all the senators and state representatives were there. And we wandered halls, and I answered questions for 2 or 3 hours about my experience with turnaround companies, WyoTech, and, if it has value, and not knowing where all these conversations were going to go. But at about 1:00, Bob Nicholas said, oh, Jimmy says, at 2:00, you've got a meeting with Eli Bebout. Again, I'm not politically involved at all. I said, well, who's Eli Bebout? Oh, he's the president of the Senate. I said, okay, show me where his office is at 2:00, and I'll go there, So I go into Eli's office at 2:00, and there's 7 other senators sitting in front of his big desk, and I sit right in the middle, and he's a no-nonsense guy, and he just starts drilling me on my past experiences and WyoTech, and then he just 10 or 15 minutes into it, he just cuts to the chase. He says, Jim, he says, we're about ready to give $5 million to the community college to buy WyoTech, and we aren't sure it's a good idea. I said, oh, Eli, it's not a good idea unless you want to fund it every year. And it just set him back. He said, well, how do you know that? I said, because they put their business plan on their website, and I read it, and they don't have any money in there, or very little bit for advertising and marketing and admissions. I said, it won't work. Our type of students they have to be processed and have to build a relationship and explain to them how this is going to pay off for them and their parents and everything else. And I said, their business plan, in my opinion, will not work. And it just set him back. And he said, well, we are not going to fund this every year. He said, we just wanted to save WyoTech. He said, why if I loan that money to you over 10 years at 2.5% interest? He said, would that help you find the rest of your money? I said, make all the difference in the world. And he barks an order to a senator sitting right beside me. And he says, go get Dave Groover. And again, wouldn't recognize Dave Groover but I remember the name. But anyway, so I had no idea what it was about. So 5 minutes later, this senator comes in with Dave Groover, and he has a notepad in his hand. He says, how can I help you, Mr. President? And Eli Bebout starts barking races. He said, change this bill such and such so Mathis can apply to borrow $5 million from the state of Wyoming, non-recourse, 2.5% interest, and put it in there that the governor and the Wyoming Business Council have to decide if they're going to loan it to Mathis or give it to the community college. And I'm sitting there. This is the craziest day of my life. And long story short, we were able to win over the business council by writing a 100-page business plan that made sense to them, and we were able to borrow that money. And then had a family member. By the end of the week, that was on a Wednesday. By the end of the week, he heard I was hobnobbing with politicians and said, "What's that all about?" So I told him. I said, "Yeah, I think it's going to work. $5 million." And I said, "I found $3.5 million. I just need $3.5." He said, "I'm good for that." By the end of the week, he says, "I don't want anybody else. He said, let's just make this a family deal." So we were able to partner up and with a family member in the state of Wyoming. I borrowed that $5 million, and away we went. So we started with 12 students. When I left in 2002, we had 2,200 students. And so we had 225,000 square feet. They lost a bunch of the leases and everything else. But so we had 12 students and 225,000 square feet of buildings and training space. So yeah, you had to search for a student or instructor. Or we only had 12 employees, 12 students. And in July 2nd, 2018. And currently we have 1,008 students and 225 employees, and could have more if I could find teachers and housing for them, and more housing for students. So
That's
which we're working
crazy.
on. It is crazy. Yeah.
So what did you change? What needed to be done?
Well, the two previous companies, their philosophy was it's all about the number of students and seats, whether they could pay or not. My deal is you don't start WyoTech. It's just like selling a cat dozer or whatever the case may be. When a salesman sells that cat dozer, you're not going to leave with that cat dozer until there's contracts and you know how cat's going to get paid or the dealership is going to get paid.
Sure.
I'm the same way. So what the two previous companies did was they would finance students. They would collect as much from the student aid, federal aid, as possible. And then if it wasn't enough, which in most cases it wasn't, they would give them a scholarship, discount tuition. It was an internal scholarship, no money behind it. Or they would finance the student at 15% interest or whatever, which students as a whole didn't pay.
Yeah.
So my deal is, just like I ran it 15 years earlier, as of 2018, my deal is we're going to know how every student is going to pay or they can't account. Because I got to rely on my employees want paid.
Yeah,
I got $12 million of debt to pay back. You know, so we are very good at recruiting students that understand, want to be there with parent support. So now their parents are involved in that decision-making process. So they have to support their son or daughter financially as well as emotionally to travel clear across the country to go to school in Laramie, Wyoming. And so currently we have students from pretty much all 50 states. We get a lot from Hawaii, believe it or not, East Coast, West Coast. Yeah. So
you have the parents essentially co-sign.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. They get a parent loan or bring cash. A lot of them bring a lot of cash to the table. And so we're doing very, very well because we have a niche market. We know who we're after, and we are not all things to all people. And again, do I want to see poor students and students that can't afford us to come there if they're really interested? Yes. So we have a team also that works to try to find external scholarship for those type of students as well. And we have a foundation that we have as well, and it provides some scholarship. But as a whole, our bread and butter is finding high school students that are graduating with parent support, financially and emotionally.
But see, so the proposition with college used to be it's an investment. And if you give us X amount of dollars, you go get this job that's going to pay you Y amount of dollars. That's going to be a lot more than what you're giving us.
Absolutely right.
That value proposition doesn't exist anymore, largely, which is why college admissions are declining for the first time in U.S. history, which is fascinating because I think the word's gotten out. Wait a minute. I'm not guaranteed a job out of school, let alone a job that's paying $100,000 a year, like you told me. But with this, the value proposition is more than intact because how much are these kids making out of school?
So our students spend between tuition and housing and maybe a little living expenses, or some living expenses, somewhere around $40,000 to $42,000.
Okay.
For
1 year.
For 9 months.
For 9 months.
So our uniqueness is our students go to school 8 hours and 20 minutes a day.
Wow.
They start at 7 o'clock in the morning, go to 4:20 in the afternoon. They have to be clean shaven every day. No earrings, nose rings, tongue rings. If they miss 3 days, they're out.
No kidding.
Yeah, in a 6-week period.
Huh.
And so we're very highly structured. We are there to train them, period.
Sure.
Students have to be there to be trained because we take their training and education very, very serious. So we have to have the right student that will accept that type of stuff.
Yeah.
And so in 9 months, they get more credit hours and clock hours in 9 months because we go to school 8 hours and 20 minutes a day than most junior colleges give in 2 years. So that's our value proposition. So yes, you're going to spend $42,000 for that 9 months, but we also have a career fair. We have one coming next week, Wednesday and Thursday. That will blow your mind. But we have employers fly from Hawaii, fly out of Alaska, fly from Arkansas, all over the United States. And we limit it to 100 employer groups because of space. And it's filled when we turn the computer on to allow them to register. It's filled in literally minutes.
Wow.
Because they want to come because our students are used to uniforms. They're used to attendance policy. They're used to professionalism. Our whole shop's and grading system theory and shop is based on working in a shop. The more you get done, the better you do, the more efficient you are, the more you're going to advance and or get paid.
Sure.
And so anyway, we have offers of low on the $15 or $16 a range, which are very few.
Yeah.
And they don't get anybody.
Yeah.
All the way up to $35 to $40 an hour starting wage, sign-on bonuses, tuition reimbursement. Most companies are offering to pay back your tuition over 2 or 3 years if you work for them. Tool reimbursement. Several companies fly in their private jets will fly students out to show them their headquarters and some of their shops in their private jets and fly them back that same day as a career fair. Yeah, it's the most amazing thing to see anymore. These students have the world by the tail if they do their part.
If they do their part,
yep.
Which is the big.
And most of them do.
So, per conventional logic, if I were to listen to most people, they would say those kids don't exist nowadays. How do you find these kids?
Yeah, that's a great question because you hear that continually. There's nobody who wants to work. There's nobody interested in this anymore. And I will tell you that our recruiting process is we have recruiters, admissions representatives live in various states. Like we have 4 or 5 in California. We have 2 or 3 in Texas. And we have, I think, right at 30 admissions recruiters or admissions representatives. And they visit high schools, tell our story.
Well, you're essentially hiring, though. You're saying admissions, but this is a hiring process in a lot of ways.
It really is.
Yeah.
Because they have to vet these students and talk to them and their parents to find the right fit.
Correct. Yeah.
And to your previous question, it's harder than it was 20 years ago, but we're good at it. And so we find students that have been told you have to go to a college to be successful. You have to do this. You can't do that. We find these students that want to be outdoors or more woodsy type people and hands-on, and we find them and with parent support, and we are going gangbusters. During COVID, all our competitors, all the junior colleges as a whole went online. We chose, we'll shut this company down before I go online.
Yeah.
Because I'm a hands-on learner. I've got to get I can read, I can write, I can study, but normally I experiment before I go to the book. That's the type of student that we're after. Someone that says, oh yeah, I can figure this out. And then they might fail, so then they might go to the book. Well, again, we teach a lot of theory, but if we see, as a teacher, again, I was a teacher there. So as a teacher, when they see blank looks, when they're trying to teach a subject matter, they quit and they take those students to the shop and explain, this is what I'm trying to explain in theory. And then the lights come on and then they'll go back to the classroom and teach more theory. And then when their blank looks happen again, they go back. So I chose to either shut the company down and fail and go bankrupt before I'd go online. And we got the governor's support, Governor Gordon's support in Wyoming to allow us to open back up with the state health department and the county health department with very few restrictions.
Wow.
And we put that out that we were not going to teach online. We put that out to all our leads and interested parties, digital TV and social media marketing. Our numbers doubled within a year because there's a lot of families that said, okay, my son or daughter, we want them to go to Wyoming. It's the least populated state in the nation.
Yeah.
The safety is probably better there than the large towns and everything else. And we'll take that risk. And we never had any problems.
Yeah,
so,
thank goodness you weren't in California.
You're right. It would have never happened.
No.
Yeah.
But I question if I was in college during COVID, if I would have dropped out or not.
Right.
Because what they did, I think, was it's insane. It's pay us more money
yes.
for a far worse product that is not at all guaranteed like it was even a few years ago. And that I can't get my head around that value proposition. It just feels wrong to me. And that's not how people learn.
Right.
They don't.
That's exactly right.
I like yesterday, I flew to Chicago for the day for a meeting. And they asked me, I could have done it over the phone, but I for a meeting like that, it has to be in person.
Yes.
I will go anywhere. It's a long day, but it is so worthwhile.
Yes, absolutely.
Engaging as a human being in whatever I need to engage in.
Absolutely.
And I think learning is the same way.
Absolutely.
And we're trying to force it into something it's not in a lot of ways.
Yep. We live by every single day. And you could ask our 225 employees, unless they're brand new, everyone will tell you the same thing. But we live by 3 principles every day. We want to provide the best training out there, period. Best training. The second thing we want to do is we want the students to have the best experience in and out of school. Yeah. So we have amazing teachers. We have amazing equipment and curriculum. And then after hours, we have a whole team that takes students on ski trips and volleyball games, basketball, softball, whatever they want to do. We have someone to work with them, work and play with those students. And then the third one is we want the best outcomes for all parties. So, and I categorize those best outcomes for 3 people. One is the student. They have to win. Financially, they have to win. They have to say, this did pay off for me. The second is the employer has to make sure that it pays off for them, because if we provide students that are not trained well enough to get jobs and keep jobs, then the employers are going to quit coming back to WyoTech.
Sure.
So the student has to win, the employer has to win, and then we have to win from a financial standpoint, because if any of us 3 lose, we'll all lose eventually. Yeah. So that's kind of what we live by every single day.
Now, on the one qualm I have with a lot of trade programs out there is that I've found, and I've heard this from a lot of employers too, it gives these kids a false sense of what they're capable of with 6 months of training, 9 months of training, a year of training.
Yes.
And they don't have that real world experience, that field experience, which is extraordinarily valuable in the trades, no matter what trade it is, because as good as the classroom is, as good as the theory is, there are so many variables, and you can't truly train in a comprehensive way if it's not real world. And so how do you combat that? Because it seems like you're doing just a fine job at that, but I've seen a lot of other schools fall short of that significantly.
Yeah, and we have some of that. Some of these students obviously think they know probably more than they do.
Yeah.
So, and it's culture. So we really explain when our career fair employers come in, make sure you hire and explain your culture to our students, and students, make sure you understand the culture you're getting into. Mm-hmm. And so culture is everything. And we also tell employees, or ask employers, if you don't have a decent mentoring, I said, our top 10% of our students, they can hit the road running. The next 30% will do really, really good. But a school is a school. If they meet the minimum requirements, they're going to graduate. Sure. And some of them learn afterwards and everything else, the students that barely pass. But the Penske's of the world, they're big supporters of WyoTech.
Yeah.
They've got a mentor, and several others, C&B Equipment, John Deere. They kind of have a mentoring program for 3 to 6 months. And these companies that understand human nature, that they just can't throw someone to the wolves and expect them to be productive day one, but put some time into these students, because again, our students, they've shown up to school, for 9 months, 8 hours and 20 minutes a day. So, and normally they have to have a good positive attitude, otherwise they won't make it. So if you hire for a positive attitude and someone that shows up to work, which is 90% of the problem, and put a little bit of time into these people, our students excel. The companies that are mom and pop and they expect too much, sometimes they normally don't have the money to compete with the bigger organizations, and then they get frustrated because their student quit or they had to run them off because they didn't know enough. And I'm just like, I see both. So it works both ways. But yeah.
How do you get them to show up? Because I've heard this more times than I can count. They just don't show up. That's our biggest problem.
If we were a commuter school, I think we'd have that problem. But we're a destination school. So a typical student has traveled 1,000 miles to attend school at WyoTech. They're in our dormitories. When they hit Laramie as a whole, they don't know anybody else.
I gotcha.
And so, and when we enroll them with their parents present, they have to sign off on all our rules and regulations. The shaving, the attendance, and on and on and on.
So you're upfront about the standards. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah,
we don't, because again, our student success is our success.
Yeah.
So we've got to get the right students. We have to set those expectations up front with mom and dad. So everybody's fully aware of what to expect when you hit Laramie. And all our students clean the shops. If they miss 3 days in a 6-week period, out the door you go, unless you're almost at the end of a phase and you broke your leg. But as a whole, that doesn't happen. So we're big on setting expectations up front and telling people we aren't for everybody, because, if you want to play and learn over 2 years, that's not our gig. We're going to throw all this stuff at 9 months. And so we graduate 85% of our students. Of the 15% we lose, 2 or 3% flunk out, 2 or 3% are kicked out, 2 or 3% are homesick and leave, and some fail and are repeat the process. And so
that's extremely low.
Yes.
That's a very small percentage.
Yes. So when we graduate 85%, that's awesome.
That's pretty
great.
But
it's because we set expectations up front. We know how they're going to get paid. And again, because they don't know anybody, when we get them in there on a Monday morning and during orientation, these students they're shy. They don't know anybody. Mm-hmm. They might have been there a day or two. They really haven't met. They might have met their roommates in our housing, but that's it.
Yeah.
They don't have any friends. They don't have any. And it's like, okay, I better shape up and do this. And within a week, they have friends. Everybody's cleaning up every night. It's just, we get them in a new pattern of life, and away they go. It is the neatest thing. I just gave a tour day before yesterday, and our students are on task. They're engaged. They aren't on their cell phones all day long playing. They have tasks to get done or they flunk out. And that's real life.
And so I'm going to construction companies or a dealership or something like that. I think the standards up front is so extraordinarily powerful.
Yes.
And that's something we haven't done the best job at, but we at least try with our values. For example, you saw them on the wall out there. We try to be very upfront. Here's how we operate. And we've learned to also be upfront about, this is a startup. Everything doesn't make sense here.
Yes.
And that's just the way it is.
Yes.
And so if you like order, this is not the place for you. Yep. And we've tried to be a lot more upfront about that. Standards. That's so key. But I think because the workforce is so constrained, what a lot of people are trying to do is we're for everybody. And they're too afraid to say, it's counterintuitive, that we're not for everybody.
Right.
And they're trying to be for everybody.
Yes.
But this isn't a world for everybody.
That's exactly right.
And I've always, at least even with my photography, I've tried to portray the industry in a genuine sense, because there's so many marketing images, recruiting images that are complete nonsense.
Yep.
And I think are disrespectful to the people within the industry.
Yes.
And I try to portray it, some technician lying under a track loader in a landfill. This is what you do.
Absolutely.
And this is why that guy right there is so proud of what he does,
yes.
is because he earns it every day.
Absolutely.
But if you here's the standards and we're not for everybody here's who we are for, you get that retention, that 85% retention. Yes. That's unheard of.
It's unheard of
for most companies.
And again, because this is probably not a good statement to make, but I always say ranching, I tell everybody about leadership. I learned most of what I learned about leading people behind a cow. But it's like ranching. You don't keep your bad cows around. You cull.
Yeah.
And we don't purposely want it. I don't want to purposely cull cows because I want to cull. But if they don't produce, I'm going to cull a cow and I'm going to replace it with another cow that does produce.
Yeah.
Students and employees are the same way. Sometimes we hang on too long and we're afraid if we lose Joe or Jack or whatever the case may be, and my deal is with students and even employees, they got to be productive. They got to want to be there. We want them engaged. And it's better to lose a student or an employee sooner rather than later. Because all it does by keeping bad blood around, whether it's a student or whatever, is they bring other people down. And sometimes you can get a lot more done when you've got a bunch of students and or employees that are engaged and want to see the vision and want to help you get there. And so we don't want to weed any students out, but we weed some students out.
Sure.
We cut our losses, drugs, alcohol, bad attitudes, attendance, weed them out. And what that does to the remaining students and or employees, it drives their motivation up. They realize why they're there.
It enforces the standards too.
Absolutely.
We're not joking.
That's exactly right.
You just have to get rid of one for everybody else to recognize, oh,
they're serious.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So this is real.
With students, it's amazing because, they have a lot of rules and regulations in high school, but high schools as a whole don't really enforce them. Mm-hmm. So then the first week at WyoTech, it's an eye opener because we enforce them.
Well, and they're probably testing the water.
And they're testing water.
Yeah.
They let me show up late, 5 minutes or 5 seconds or whatever.
Yeah.
Nope, you got a tardy. A couple more tardies, it equals a day. Oh, and 3 days you're out. Yeah. So get serious about this. Show up. So we take our training serious. We take their training serious. So, yeah.
But I think that discipline is good for people too.
That's why we have employers come from all over the United States to recruit our students.
Yeah.
Once it's out there, once they see our quality of students, United Airlines is walked into our career fair 6 months ago. We have them every 3 months. Unannounced. We didn't have space for them, but we found a table because they heard about it. But United Airlines, they want to hire them for everything from aviation to their vehicles and upholstery. So we place a lot of students in the airline industry, but United Airlines was the first one that showed up. But they're just blown away because students are polite. It's
incredible.
They can't wear their hats backwards. We just have a lot of standards. If you meet someone, shake their hand, look them in the eye. We have a lot of standards. And again, I gave a tour 2 days ago and we had talking in a hallway with the employers that were there. And some students walked through and they take their hat off when they walked between us, and we're in their way, but they took their hat off. I said, excuse me, I need to walk through here. Hey, you're fine. You're good. But it's just, and again, we teach some of that, but it's a whole different environment than any other school I've ever seen. So, and we're excited about it.
Continuing with the ranching theme, I think you've probably learned a lot of lessons with working dogs too.
Absolutely.
And the happiest dogs I've seen are working dogs.
Sure.
They're not the ones that live inside all day.
That's exactly
They're
right.
not the ones that are pampered with the haircut every other week with all the treats and the different clothes. They're the ones that have a job and have discipline.
And they love it.
And they love it because that's what they were designed to do over hundreds and thousands of years. I don't know if it's that long, but it's centuries of breeding to design these animals to have a job and to perform and ultimately serve. I think humans are the same way.
Absolutely.
We're designed to serve.
Absolutely.
And to create value in the world.
Yes.
And to have a sense of discipline.
Yes.
But we live in this world in which that has been watered down so much so that we think that's actually bad now, which is insane.
It is. Yeah. WyoTech employees, they are givers. We are all givers. We give our time to our students. The business is around. So part of our grading system, students can receive extra points. So if they miss a tardy and dock some points, they can earn that back by community service. So we're big on community service. So we go help park cars at the University of Wyoming. We help serving food for old folks' homes. And so we constantly have a whole team that all they do is coordinate to allow our students to go serve our public in Laramie, which is awesome, So, yeah, but it's to your point, people are happier when they're serving and have a purpose.
Yeah. So based on your experience, this is another qualm I have with the push for trade schools, is that we need more trade schools. But then I look at in the construction industry, we need 550,000 people this year to just meet demand. 550,000. And you look at the trade school numbers, the math doesn't work. It doesn't math.
That's right.
And so while you're doing everything you can on your front, which is absolutely extraordinary, how do you believe and how do you see the United States navigating the next decade or two, where half the tradespeople are out the door and demand, in theory, is staying constant?
Yeah.
How do we navigate that?
It's a huge challenge, and I don't have the answer, to be honest with you. But besides, we're going to continue to try to grow and solve part of that in a minuscule area, because we can't provide 500,000, and that's probably just the heavy equipment industry.
That's just construction.
Yeah. That doesn't mean trucking. That doesn't mean automotive dealerships.
No,
everybody is screaming for hands-on, practical tradespeople, whether it's plumbing, electrical, automotive, diesel, construction. And it's a challenge. And I do know several of the states, though, are realizing that, because industry is putting putting pressure on politicians to change that and get the career and technical education back into the high schools, because it was taken away over the last 20 years. And so several states, Wyoming is one of them, is that they're really starting to focus on how do we train more CTE and teachers or instructors to get back into the high school so we can provide some shop classes on. And so it's got to start with industry putting pressure on politicians to say, we've got to expose the students that are interested in high school into some type of a trade, because if you're good at one trade, it can lead into a different trade. But if you're kind of good at, I don't care if it's woodworking, electrical, plumbing, whatever, it can lead into automotive or heavy equipment or whatever the case may be. But we've got to put pressure on these politicians in these states to support career and technical education in high school. And that will feed more volume. But again, we're 5 or 10 years away from, if they made the decision today, we're several years away.
Yeah. And that's why I believe most of this falls on private enterprise to sort out.
Yes.
I think everybody's waiting for you in a cape to swoop in and save the day.
Yes.
Well, we have the answer. It's WyoTech, which in part it is the answer. It is a answer.
But we're minuscule.
Yeah, but it's such a big issue that's been decades in the making that I think it's going to take every business in the industry seriously investing in this, in their workforce, in the next workforce, to make it a reality. And if everybody does that with the support of the WyoTechs of the world, I'm optimistic. I think you can go create a lot of change pretty fast.
But we want to continue to grow and probably grow outside of Laramie. Yeah. And so, and we love the trades. We love automotive and diesel. And we have an advanced diesel program that students have to go through our 6-month core diesel program, and it's all our equipment. We have semis, we have transmissions, clutches, air conditioning, you name it, we have it, that they learn. And then our advanced diesel program is we take in semis from Halliburton, Penske, anybody that needs a semi completely rebuilt. Wow. And we go through them completely in 90 days.
Wow.
And again, we can do that and be successful because our students go to school 8 hours and 20 minutes a day. They're DOT inspected. I don't care if an engine needs rebuilt or replaced, transmission, lights, everything has gone through. And out the door typically in 90 days.
No kidding.
And with a DOT inspection. Now, if we have to wait for parts, which sometimes, with COVID, we still have to wait for parts, but normally we can have them in and out in 90 days, rebuilt semis, basically. And so.
And Halliburton isn't kind to their.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah. Oh, my goodness. They can beat
or
them
Penske
up.
trucks.
Yeah. It's amazing.
Yeah.
So students get great experience. Really good experience. But we want to take that and expand that across, we were going to just build bigger and better at Laramie. But our challenge is housing available for our employees. Most of our instructors come from out of state. And Laramie, if you Google Laramie real estate, we have very few homes available to buy or rent.
Sure.
And so now we're looking at possibly going outside of Laramie to maybe the southeast, northeast, and to start another campus. So we're kicking those ideas around. The other one of my goals is dealing with the government with federal financial aid is a pain because they keep restricting private schools. And so
because of lobbying by higher education.
Absolutely.
Go figure.
And so one of my goals is to have industry possibly support a pool of money and make that, our default rates are very low because our tuition is reasonable. They pay back their loans. And so have private industry and we could go through our foundation or another different company, but have industry put a pool of money so we can get away from these crazy regulations.
You could do that. You could do that tomorrow.
That's what I'm thinking. And so that is one of my goals is to have a pool of money that is, again, the investors could put a pool of money together. We would manage or have a bank manage or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
But they will get their money back and design it for very similar to what the interest rates are for if you borrowed through the federal financial aid, which is right now probably 8 or 9%. So it'd have to be competitive, but get away from some of these regulations that absolutely make no sense for a private school in Laramie, Wyoming.
I could put a fund together for you from cat dealers.
That's what I figured.
By next week.
Yes.
Seriously.
We've mentioned this to our employer groups, and they said, Jim, put something together. We're interested.
Yeah. I mean, we have 4 cat dealers invested in our business for this reason. They're looking for solutions and doing stuff they've never thought before, but that's a much easier sell than investing in BuildWit.
Sure.
By a long shot.
Yeah.
I think, not that you need my opinion on anything, but I think I really think the bulk of the solution is going to be within private business to figure this out.
Yes.
There's no way around it, I think, based on the numbers and the math. And so I think every business, every dealer, for example, if I look at just Cat, John Deere, Volvo, all the manufacturers, Komatsu, every dealer is going to need its own program to bring young people in and train them up effectively. And so if you all could take the principles that you've developed at WyoTech and create a program that could be scaled, that you don't have to invest in the infrastructure. The infrastructure exists. You don't have to invest in the workforce. You don't have to go out and buy buildings and create a more scalable model so that you could create this accredited program or whatever, this WyoTech program that you could go, and you've probably already thought of all this. This isn't all that clever, but apply it to all the dealers and create small
schools,
satellite WyoTechs, leveraging the resources, the tools of others, the facilities of others, the trainers of others. You could make a lot of money and a lot of impact.
Well, we're very interested in kicking those ideas around because we spend a lot of time, I call it dreaming and scheming, thinking outside the box. And we've been very successful at whatever we've done for the most part. And so we are kicking a lot of those types of ideas around literally as we speak.
Yeah. So, well, I've been around the block. I'm 28 years old, so I don't know very much. But I've gotten to see more in this industry, in this country, than most people at this point, which is, I'm super fortunate. And no one really has this figured out.
Right.
Like, based on what you've just said over however long we've been talking, you guys have it pretty figured out.
We can find students. We just have to have a place to go with them.
Yeah.
So, we're very good at recruiting and setting the expectations, and we just need more space. We just built a 90,000 square foot addition. It's completely full. So again, we've gone from 12 students up to over 1,000 in 5 years. And our problem isn't finding students. Our problem is space and teachers. So if they could provide the space and the teachers,
exists.
We can probably find students for them.
Yes. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. The space, the shops exist, the facilities exist, even the training facilities now oftentimes exist at major dealers.
Yes.
They all have training facilities.
Yes.
Yeah. But there's just no like standard program.
Right.
Everybody's trying to do it themselves.
Right.
Which is great. Like I love seeing it. And some of these programs are wildly successful, like Carter Machinery. Their program is incredible. And a lot of dealers are, but everybody's trying to do it their own way.
Yes.
And it's like, but you've already kind of figured out the way it works. And so all you have to do is just apply that.
Yeah. And we can't teach everything in 9 months. And they can stay longer and go take additional electives. So some students stay 12, 15, 18 months. But we train entry-level tech so they understand, the principles of stuff as a whole, electronics, computer systems, emission systems. And so we can't teach everything from a Cat's perspective or John Deere's or Halliburton's or anybody like that. Yeah. But what we try to get our students to do, one, is show up with a positive attitude, ready to work and willing to learn more. And if they can have the basic principles down of a diesel trucks and some skid steers and hydraulics and everything like that, they can apply those principles that they learned into whatever direction they go, whether it's on Caterpillar's equipment or Halliburton rigs or whatever the case may be. Yeah.
Well, but that's what all the companies want, though.
Yes.
Because what's happened too is, and I spoke at a cat dealer conference a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago now. So I don't know, almost every cat dealer in North America was there. And I tried to explain it in the most simple terms. And so this past generation, not my father, because my father's a tax lawyer, but his generation, they grew up in the garage working on stuff and with tools in their hands. Yes. And they mowed the lawn and properties were a little bit bigger. So they had chores and they had stuff to do. But over the decades, the United States has urbanized a lot more. And so we're way more comfortable than we've ever been. We have people to do stuff for us now, and we don't have to do a lot of stuff because I'm living in a city as opposed to rural America. And then now I'm growing up with an iPad and the car. I want to work on it, but it's so damn complicated that I don't even know. I don't have the diagnostic software to even figure out what this fault code means. So I have to bring it to the dealer regardless of how much mechanical know-how I have. So you have a generation now that just doesn't have the basics. One, they haven't learned how to work largely and I think hard work is a skill. It's not inherent. I think that's a load of crap. I had to learn how to work. I learned how to work when I was 15 in Montana, getting my ass beat in a ranch setting. Yep. And that sobered me up quick. That was the cold water on my face that I needed. Yep. A lot of my friends growing up, though, they never had that. Absolutely. They didn't learn how to work. And it is black and white. Yes. So one, they have to learn how to work. Two, they're showing up 18 with no knowledge. And it's not their fault. They've just never held a pair of pliers in their hand before. So they don't know what pliers do. They don't know how to read a tape measure. They don't know how to use a ratchet strap. And the older generation, they sit there like, you idiot, you don't know how to use a tape measure, because they didn't have to think about learning how to use a tape measure because they learned it when they were 5 years old. Absolutely. In the backyard. I didn't have that. And then you ask the past generation to teach it, but it's like asking you to teach me English. You don't know. You just picked it up. Right. So they don't even know how to teach it. Right. It's crazy.
That's very true. Yes.
Yeah. So
and the patience level.
Yeah.
I hire several high school kids every year, and I'm fairly patient until it's just like I can't stand it anymore. Sure.
Yeah.
I had one student, high school student, run one of my old John Deere tractors, and I had a brake, and you had to flip a lever to lock the brake in. Well, he said that it was smelling. He was driving and smelling.
Yeah.
I go over there and the brake is on. You didn't release the brakes.
I've done that 100 times.
You wore the brakes out in this thing. It's just like, oh my land, frustrating. But but again, it's not their fault because they have not grown up with it and been exposed to it. So we have to get more people exposed to the real world. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. And that's what I love and why I tell people I love what we do, how we do it, and who we do it with, because it's exposing, it's taking young 18, 19-year-old kids as a whole and exposing them in a training environment where we do have patient teachers or instructors, and they get frustrated once in a while, but we teach them the tape measure, literally.
Sure.
And, all your math behind formulas and hydraulics and electrical and get tools in their hands immediately and meters. So, yep.
Yeah. That's so exciting.
It is.
So cool.
Yep.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. I had no idea you went to WyoTech.
Yes, I'm a WyoTech, and that's why I'm so passionate about it. I know what it did for me.
Well, yeah.
And it's just like, boy, if you do your part as a student, you can have some amazing opportunities in life.
It's such a cool story.
Yeah.
You went there, you taught there, and then you end up
owning the thing. Yeah.
Owning
who
the
would
thing.
ever thought? I never would have never dreamed anything like that.
That's
Never
crazy.
dreamed of having a ranch or two of them. It's just, and God's been very, blessed me greatly. And I could lose it tomorrow and I still want to be a better person tomorrow than I am today. That's my goal. I don't want to just be known for my assets, but I have a passion for people to see them succeed, and training is the way to go.
Well, you're not just known for your assets now, though, because how many kids are however many kids are going through that program, you helped them get that start.
Someone asked me how many students have gone through on my watch, whether as a teacher all the way up as president, and I'm guessing around 35,000.
That's
crazy.
Yeah,
that I've had something to do with WyoTech on my watch or when I was there, and probably 35,000 students I've seen go through there.
That's that's a huge impact.
Yeah.
And then how many people do they now impact and support?
Absolutely.
And
right.
how big are their families and their impact in their communities? And
yes,
that really fans out.
It's pretty humbling to get. I'm friends with a lot of people on Facebooks that I might have taught them, 40 years ago, 45 years ago, and now they got families. Now their grandkids are coming to WyoTech because of the influence we've had on them. It's pretty humbling. It's pretty cool. So, yeah.
And so if I'm somebody listening to this and I have a kid that's thinking about what they want to do in life, or they want to go do something like this, how do they find WyoTech? Yeah,
just Google wyotech.edu, and you'll see some amazing...
WYOTech.
TECH. Yep.
Yeah.
WYOTECH. TECH. Yep.
Yeah.
And we have some amazing videos and of our facilities. And again, I come from a ranch background, so several of those videos of me on just good principles that we try to live by.
Yeah.
And so it shows some of the ranch life, and we tied into WyoTech. When we bought WyoTech 5 years ago, WyoTech had a bad brand. A blotched brand because of the previous ownership. And so we spent a lot of money to advertise and tell a different story. So we added my personal cattle brand to our marketing materials. So we didn't want to replace all the brand, but we added Heart T. So it's a heart and a T right beside it. And so we added that to our marketing just to signify there's something different about the brand, the main brand of WyoTech. And so we call it Love Trades. And so we love the trades. And so we wanted to show the public and the world that, okay, yeah, if you Google back 5 years ago, if you Googled WyoTech, Corinthian colleges came up with all their sins.
Sure.
And so now you Google WyoTech and boy, you get some pretty positive stuff. And some of our videos that we've used to promote and tell a different story and how we're doing things differently. And because we're there for the students. Again, student success is our success, and it's not the other way around. We have to provide some good training for their success.
Well, and that's how like the conscious capitalism movement is. That's the premise of it. Is we think business is bad, profit is bad, but no. If it's true conscious capitalism, if you make sure your stakeholders win, which are first and foremost your students, you win, and then the more you win, the more you can make your students win.
Absolutely.
And it's this virtuous cycle.
Absolutely right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, we have to be profitable.
Yeah.
But we take most of those profits and we reinvest.
Correct.
Right back into the company. We're buying new tools. We just built a 90,000 square foot building. We built 5,000 more administration area. We built 5,000 square feet of classroom space, all in the last 5 years.
Yeah.
And we bought 70 acres across the street to expand. Our goal is to have 3,500 students on ground in the next 4 years, and then 10,000 students between online. We might teach sales and marketing online or something like that.
That's really cool.
But we want 10,000 students by the year 2030. So we've grown exponentially already, but we've got to continue that. And because we do want to provide a service to industry, we see the need and we want to be a big part of it.
Yeah. Wow. That's so cool.
Yeah, we have big goals.
That's what people should have is big goals.
Yeah.
I don't like talking to people that don't have big goals.
Right.
It's like, come on, like the world's a big place.
It
you can
really
do some
is.
cool stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's just such a cool story.
Thank you.
So exciting.
It really is. We love what we do and how we do it and who we do it with. So
yeah, I'd love to make it up there at some point.
Oh, it'll blow you away.
I'm sure.
It will blow you away.
I have to go.
Only 5% of our students come from Wyoming. That's the other unique thing.
Yeah.
95% of our students come from 1,000 miles away on average.
And I've tried to ask questions that, like a contractor, I've heard like what they would dismiss this. Everybody's so dismissive. Well, that works. So one thing they would say is, well, of course it works in Wyoming because everybody was raised on a farm.
Right.
And so 5%.
Only 5% come from Wyoming. So we go to rural America and the 4-H and FFA and that type of organization in high schools. We're at the National FFA convention, was it last week? I believe it was. And so
that's Future Farmers of America.
Future Farmers of America.
Yeah.
We love, people that have experience with or little experience or exposure to a little bit of farming or ranching or raising an animal, whether it's a goat or a pig or a steer or whatever, because they're out in the elements a little bit and they have they're more mature. They've had responsibilities to grow that animal or raise something. So we love good old ranch farm, wannabe farmer ranch kids. And so we get city students out of Chicago all the time too, but we have great students and we handpick them as a whole. So
I talk about this a lot intentionally, but I grew up in a small town next to Scottsdale, Arizona, that has more rich people than Scottsdale. Everybody knows Scottsdale. They don't know the town I've been. It's wealthier, and it is in theory like the best place you can be in the United States in a lot of ways.
Yep.
And at least what you would think is the best place you could be. Everybody has money, the sun's shining, no crime, everything, life is good, fancy cars. But I now, and I say that because I've been around the blue collar world enough to know that resonates with me so much more deeply.
Isn't that the truth?
Than that world. And I go back to that world and I almost don't recognize it anymore, even though that's what I knew my entire upbringing. And this summer, we did a road trip across America, and we cross into Montana, and I go into the local grocery store in whatever town we were in. I don't even know what town we were in. I go into the grocery store, and on the wall, they have all of the Future Farmer of America pictures, these kids with the pigs that they've raised. And they're terrible pictures, but the kids are so proud of their pig. And it's hanging on it's like a Safeway. So it's like a big chain grocery store. And the whole wall's covered with these pictures. And I just think like there's just like the sense of relief and just like, oh, this is amazing. It almost gives you like a sense of hope in a way.
Absolutely.
God, like I'm just around so many people that they just talk shit about the next generation. That's all they do. It's all they do. It's so negative. And then you see that and you're just like, oh, okay.
Again, I'm not saying WyoTech is the only place, but you wander around WyoTech, and I give 2 or 3 tours a week normally when I'm there, and I'm there most every week, to industry or business people, whatever. And you tour our campus, and it's like, wow, wow, wow. Our future generation, we're going to be okay. There are a lot of good young people out there still. And as a whole, society has put them down and say, industry says you can't find anybody, but they're there. It's harder, I think, to find them, but they are there and they're looking for an opportunity, and their parents want them to have an opportunity. And again, I think it's harder to find them, but they're there. Yeah. And we're very proud of our students and what they've accomplished.
Oh, and we better find them.
Absolutely. Absolutely right. We've got to find them.
We have to find them.
And train them. We need more of that.
Yeah.
Absolutely right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I am just so impressed and excited. Obviously, this gets me going.
Oh, me too.
I get excited about this.
I'm passionate about training students and seeing their success. That's all there is to it.
It is so cool.
That's why at 66 years old, I'm still doing it.
Well, I've done a lot of speaking this year, more than ever before. I mean, I've spoken more this year than every other year combined. It's been crazy. And usually, and forgive me for this, it's old white guys that I'm speaking to.
Yeah.
And while I like talking to old white guys, because they're still the leaders of the industry and they still have the influence in a lot of ways, I spoke to AGC of California a month ago in Palm Springs, and they had the usual contractor crowd, some younger leaders, but they had a lot of college kids there from the construction management program, the different construction management programs in California. So these were kids that are in school, but I loved talking to them because they were so excited.
Yes.
And they wanted to show me the community service projects they're working on, and they're just the way they look at you. They're just like they're like, so what do you got for me? Like what can I learn? Where should I go? What should I be thinking about? And to me, that's so much more exciting in a lot of ways, because you're just like, wow, they're hungry. They're getting after it. This is so much fun.
Yes.
And this is the future of the industry right here.
Absolutely right. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. We had a high school instructor visitation last week, and one of the teachers from a high school out of Texas said, we thought you staged all this because we kept asking students if they liked it. And they got so excited about showing us what they were doing and learning and everything else. And they're so positive. And we said, no, we give tours every single day. We don't have anything to hide. We don't set the stage. Students are used to tours literally every single day. But they said, we can't believe the attitude of these students. And they're so excited about their future and what they're learning and everything else. So our future is in good hands. We just have to find more of them.
Well, is it just for kids out of high school, or maybe I'm 27, I want a career change? Could I come to WyoTech?
Yes. Yeah. We will take 70-year-olds. Yeah.
That's good to know.
As long as they figure out how to pay for it, we're good. So, yep.
I gotcha.
Yep.
Okay.
And federal financial aid is available for all those that qualify.
It does work. Yeah.
But sometimes it's not enough to cover the difference.
Sure.
So that's why we're in the high school market where parents, they can make up the difference with the student. Their son or daughter doesn't qualify for enough.
I understand.
So, yep.
Okay. Well, thanks for coming down here to do this.
My pleasure.
Thank
you.
Really happy we did this, and I can't wait to visit WyoTech.
Well, please do.
Yeah.
And that goes for all the entire audience. Come visit WyoTech, and it will blow you away.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, people are passing through Laramie, Wyoming all the time.
Yes.
Big vacation destination. So
yeah.
Yeah. I actually have to, in January, go to North Dakota.
Well,
so maybe
if you fly into Denver, we're only 2 hours north of Denver.
And then I can just drive to North Dakota from there.
Assuming the roads right up I-25. Yep.
Yeah. But yeah, the interstates are usually pretty good.
They're normally pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe I'll do that.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll just fly into Denver and drive up and then drive to North Dakota from there.
Sure.
All right. Okay. Well, thanks for stopping by. Appreciate it.
Thank you. It's been awesome. Thank you.